Hello. Welcome to the garden of the Hummingbird Bungalow. It's not a big garden, but it is a rather beautiful place. It has that kind of beauty that's only really visible if you stop a while and give yourself time to take it all in. And luckily, that's exactly what we're going to do. Before we begin our tour, it's nice to start with a wind-down exercise. Tonight's wind-down is an exercise we call noting. It helps to soothe the mind, and once you've learned it, you can even use it if you wake up in the night. We're going to be counting our breaths and then just gently noting thoughts and feelings as they arise. We're not trying to change them. We're simply labeling thinking as thinking, feeling as feeling. It may sound incredibly simple, but it can help to create distance between ourselves and the thought, ourselves and the feeling, so we don't get so involved in it. That, in turn, creates a more restful state of mind. In other words, the perfect state of mind for a gentle, restful sleep. So, to begin with, just take a moment or two to get comfortable. Make sure you're nice and cool. Just starting with some nice, big, deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with the next out breath, allow the breath to return to its natural rhythm, in and out through the nose. And just feeling the weight of the body pressing down into your bed. And in your own time, starting to count the breaths as they pass. 1 with the rise, 2 with the fall, just up to a count of 10. When you get to 10, you can stop and start again at 1. And remember, anytime you get distracted, the moment you realize you're distracted by thought, simply note it, thinking, and return to the breath. Or, if a feeling arises, feeling, and return to the breath. That noting is very gentle, not harsh at all. Think of it like a feather, just gently touching the surface of a crystal glass. I'm going to give you a few moments just to keep counting the breath and noting any thoughts and feelings that arise. That's great. At the border of the vegetable garden, Nasturtium tangles around posts made of light wood. Nasturtium will grow in whatever space it has, spreading lily pad leaves and colorful bursts. The leaves are round and vibrantly green, held up by delicate lime stems. These fronds are wide as possible to absorb lots of sunlight. Nasturtium flowers here are warm and radiant. One blossom will have an orange heart, then fray to marigold yellow. Another will be red with splotches of ochre. Another is pure coral. It is as though they grew from jelly beans instead of seeds. Here is a monarch butterfly regally sampling each flower. This butterfly glides around a blossom, then lands delicately on a yellow petal for a drop of nectar. With a big flap, the monarch butterfly is off again, spiraling to an orange bloom. Now a cabbage butterfly flaps towards the nasturtium. This butterfly is much smaller than the nearby monarch, and the wings are pale yellow. The cabbage butterfly flutters around. There are so many blossoms to choose from. It settles on a little pink flower with orange stripes and carefully lands on a magenta petal. Near the garden gate grows a patch of wildflowers. Somebody scattered a handful of seeds from the forest, and these blooms crept up in the peaceful earth of the backyard. Only a few months ago, tiny green shoots sprung from the dark soil. Now, the seeds have stretched, spreading roots and leaves, and you see that these wildflowers are poppies. Their stems are thin and delicate, sprouting feathery leaves. The poppy holds orange at the base of its round flower as a full cup of tangerine wine. As petals unfurl, the poppy lightens to yellow like pages from an old book. Golden filaments flutter and whisper within the blooms, strands of thread from a lush tapestry. These blooms are so simple and vivid. You could have made them with just your hands, dipping your fingers into slippery paint and tracing the flowers onto a canvas of sky. As soon as you step into the garden, you can smell the grapefruit tree. This tree blooms all year, an evergreen that brings more fruit every few weeks. Although we should really call it an ever-yellow tree, for the blossoms and grapefruits that cover the canopy are gold as gumdrops. The petals in perfumed clumps around the branches. They are velvet, soft, and thick. It's almost unbelievable that such small blooms develop to those plump grapefruits that you can slice in half and spoon out with honey on top, or sprinkled sugar, or plain and simple. You even have those tiny silver spoons in the kitchen just for eating grapefruit, just for this ever-yellow ritual. This tree is a small universe, each fruit and blossom another planet and star, shaping constellations and galaxies of nectar. And braided between the branches of these grapefruit trees, strands of jasmine. Vine by vine, the jasmine climbs its flowers up and around and upside down the great grapefruit tree. You can follow this green thread from its roots on the ground, circling the trunk, twining around branches. Anything can grow here, great and small. There's space for every plant. This pomegranate tree has been growing for 5 years now. It needs that much time to grow so tall and produce fruit. As a sapling, it seemed like a paintbrush emerging from the earth, just a little branch with splashes of jade leaves. Those leaves grew in bunches, like splatters of paint, and it's difficult to see where one branch ends and another begins as you look at the plant in this moment, as if the pomegranate tree was a watercolor portrait. The shapes of leaves blur with new blooms of fruit, although the tree looks more like a bush right now, with smooth oval leaves speckled with yellow and green. The tree stretches as high as it can, waving in the wind of the evening. This is the first summer that fruit will grow on this pomegranate tree. You can see the small blossoms now, red and soft as clouds around a sunset. These ruby petals hold globes of pollen, gold as sunshine. This tree has more growing to do, but someday the branches will droop with plump pomegranates, swaying a little more slowly in the warm winds of summer. For all these nectars, this garden is loved by the hummingbirds of the neighborhood. There's one fluttering about now, and his feathers are so colorful you could imagine that the bird is made from tiny rubies and emeralds. The sun shines on every tiny feather. Notice how his wings wave, shimmering in the air around him. He does seem to hum, doesn't he? This hummingbird glides to his own tune, swirling from trees to vines and back again. Bright as a scarf, he loops and loops all around the garden, as though the bird embroiders the air with silk. He knows where all the sweets are, swooping along the pine trellis where the honeysuckle sprawls. The flowers here are soft yellow and white, like bowls of butter and cream on a green tablecloth. That's just how the hummingbird sees them as he bounces from bud to bud. He pokes his head, no bigger than a thimble, into the blossoms. The hummingbird hovers along the honeysuckle, his tiny tummy full of sweets. He hums along happily and swoops up into the sky, content for today. It's a perfect time to water the garden. In the late afternoon, now it's cooler, the plants will have a chance to drink the water without it all evaporating away. Over by the grass, you can see the shiny sprinklers emerge from the ground with a soft click. Water sprays from the 3 sprinklers. It almost sounds like the ticking of a clock as the water drizzles over the garden in little bursts. The sprinklers cover the vegetable patch in a mist. Drops of water begin to gather on the vegetables planted in neat rows, on the full leaves of lettuce, on the stringy fronds of carrots peeking from the earth, on the towering vines of tomatoes. As the golden sunshine of the afternoon falls on the garden, the light refracts through the sprinklers. Rainbows veil the garden now, adding a wash of yellow and red and blue to the vegetable greens. With all that summer sun, the trees need a bit more water to grow their figs and pomegranates and grapefruits. It's best to take the hose over to a tree and let the water run over the soil around the trunk for a few minutes. You can watch the water drip from the green rubber tube, slowly turning the dusty earth darker. You can imagine that the trees are having a cool bath, soaking in all that fresh water. It must be so peaceful. In the late afternoon, the garden belongs to cats. They get quite sleepy and come from all around to nap among the plants here. These cats grew up in their own gardens, and now they wander the neighborhood safely. No one knows a garden as well as a cat. Do you see one now, wiggling under the fence? Yes, a tabby cat. Bright green eyes patiently steps around the flower patch to her favorite bed of daffodils. She is careful to nose through the green stems and find a little space before curling up underneath the yellow petals. This cat, covered in stripes of gray and brown, almost camouflaged by the shadows of daffodils. She blinks her green eyes and settles in for a snooze. There's another cat prancing down the path. You can hear the bell on his collar tinkling as this Persian cat decides where he will relax today. He has gray pointy ears and a long, fluffy tail. It is as though a cloud has floated down into the garden, although this must be a playful cloud because this cat has chosen to roll around on a patch of clover. After inspecting the ground with his teeny pink nose, the cat flops onto the soft grass. He wobbles with his tummy up, slowly tumbling from side to side. This new green grass must feel quite nice on his fluffy back. The cats nod in the sun, their eyes half closed. The sun pours like a glass of lemonade through the leaves of the great fig tree. In the sunniest patch, the terracotta pot towers over the clover and grass. The tower is made from warm orange clay and has windows for the strawberry plants to peek out. The strands of plump red berries drape along the pot, soaking up lots of sun. If you peer in, you can see the rich soil and yellow straw that keep the strawberries cozy as they grow. This tower is tall as your knee, but if you crouch down, you can see the bumblebees settle in for a snack. These bumblebees must be visiting from the neighborhood hive of honeycomb. They're so friendly and fuzzy. What an honor for them to visit us. Listen to them hum along as they gather pollen. Look at that chubby little bumblebee buzzing around the strawberries. He pauses at one white blossom, gathering up golden pollen. He zigzags up the tower, sniffing as many flowers as possible. The more pollen he gathers, the more fuzzy and yellow he becomes. From a few steps away, with all these bumblebees, it looks as though the strawberry tower has a humming halo.